Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your worst on the Xbox Series S host, Madelyn.
I'm your would be developed for the Switch 2 if I had a dev kit, host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week it's my side quest, and I've decided that we are talking about cross-platform, maybe more primarily cross-generational game releases. It's a big time for this right now with the Switch 2 being pretty new. And you said there's PS6 rumors?
Yes.
I've missed those.
You've missed them?
Yeah.
No, that's rumored for like 2077 right now.
2077?
2027.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I have snot that's making it difficult to say numbers, I guess.
Okay, we'll do a lot of numbers this week.
Okay.
So yeah, we've talked about crossplay on the context of various podcasts before. Like we talked about it with Rocket League and that sort of thing semi-recently. You flagged some other podcast that was like semi-similar to this topic that we did. Platform exclusivity, maybe. But I want to talk a little bit about what goes into releasing a game on multiple platforms or across multiple generations of the same console, how this has changed over time, places where this has failed or succeeded. And it was primarily inspired this week by, I read an article on Polygon that was about kind of the reviews that were coming out, the early reviews coming out for Pokemon Legends ZA, the new Pokemon game on the Switch.
ZA, as I would
Pokemon
call
Legends ZA. Legends ZA.
Yeah.
Actually. And it was interesting to read how close to the vest they were playing on how this game is going to look on the OG Switch. And I guess we probably know now, although I haven't looked for it, admittedly.
Looked for it either.
Let me see those trees.
I mean, it's, to be fair, it is not super uncommon for games releasing on multiple platforms to only send certain ones out for review. Unless, like, or only send a different kind upon request or whatever, right? But, yeah, it'd be interesting to know ahead of a launch how Pokemon ZA looks on the Switch one.
I mean, just given all of the feelings around Pokemon graphics, it's understandable that it might be a bit of a flashpoint. We shall certainly see. But there's a lot of, like, I mean, just the Switch 2 launch has been so fascinating to me across the board in how this has been handled. Although the more that I read about the history of this over time, it was like, well, this console generation has been unusual, but maybe not quite as unusual as it feels like to me. Perhaps it is just that I am an adult.
That is
purchasing my own games.
Can be a factor, yeah.
I think that's playing in. But yes, this podcast also inspired by how there are still games releasing for the PlayStation 4 here at the end of 2025.
Yep.
And that doesn't seem like it's going to end soon. Slow down, perhaps. But it keeps happening.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that for this generation, that started to stretch on for a long time because of, like, the shortages, right?
Right.
Because of COVID, they literally could not make enough of these consoles, and so they were never available, and so people weren't able to buy them, but they still wanted people to buy their games, right? It's not just like people were choosing not to buy a PS5 because it was expensive. They were, like, unable to. But unfortunately, I think it went on long enough that now it's just, like, expected for games that aren't, like, tentpoles,
Well, even the tentpoles. So it was interesting to read a little bit about, obviously this is even more expected for sports games or Call of Duty and the like, right? But for those, we've had 5 consecutive Call of Duty games that have released on both PS5 and PS4, right? Or I think similarly for Xbox. We've had 5 editions of Madden. We've had 4 editions of MLB The Show, which is only now, with the upcoming one, going to switch to only being on current gen. And that as of spring 2024, still about half of the monthly active users on PlayStation, that's like 50 or 60 million people, half, right?
Yeah.
Total was like 120 million. That about half of them are still playing on PS4. So I wish I could have found I'm sure that sort of stuff was like a little less out there in the previous generation, but I do wonder with PS3 or Xbox 360 or whatever what that looked like. Because obviously the PlayStation 4 is like one of the most monster consoles of all time in terms of sales, and also one of the smallest upgrades of all time in terms of what you're getting moving from a PS4 to a PS5, unless you're like me and your PS4 decided to self-destruct, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Those stats, by the way, are from a Polygon article that I was reading from early this year. Stephen Totillo, is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. But was really interesting in that despite the fact that I would assume, the reason that we are still making PS4 games is because people are buying them, right? Like, you'd think that would be the case. Seems like, we're making these because we're making some money on them. Weirdly, while we don't get a lot of transparency in game sales around how many of them are being bought across different platforms, right? We did have a little bit of public comment from like Take-Two about NBA 2K, which of course has been on different consoles. And the Gen 8 stuff, the PS4 generation stuff, according to both the chairman and the president in various press release or interviews or whatever, was not selling well. That the PS4 version performed worse than expected, that it was declining at a faster rate than the current gen stuff was growing. There's like an analyst in this article that says that it's not unusual that PS4 or Xbox One versions see less than 10% of overall sales volume. So it's really interesting that this has continued to hang on, even though the market share seems like it might be really low. Isn't that weird? That was really unexpected to me.
It probably varies from level of game.
Sure.
I have no proof of this. It's just my feeling that perhaps more people are buying indies on PS4 than NBA 2K.
Sure.
Again, that's just my gut feeling based on nothing. But I was thinking about this. It's interesting because the PS4 just like didn't have this problem because the PS3 was such a little freak.
Yeah, there
wasn't backwards compatibility.
Why did they do that to the PS3?
I don't know. They thought it would work. It was a weird piece of hardware. They were trying stuff out, and then they said, "No, this is too weird. We have to make it normal again." But because the PS3 and PS4 architecture was so different, you probably wouldn't be making it for both, unless, like, you know, you were, like, re-releasing it, like The Last of Us, for example, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't, like, a cross-gen title. That was, like, they made it for PS3, and then they re-released it pretty quick for PS4.
Yeah.
So... For that game, it was like they just didn't even have to think about this. Like I remember there being criticism at the time of it not having backwards compatibility, but they certainly didn't have to worry about supporting both systems far into the PS4's life cycle, which probably helped sales overall.
Yeah, that's true. It's an interesting kind of choice to make, right, as you look towards your next console, right? On one hand, people want backwards compatibility. There's still issues with being able to provide enough of a given console, right? Obviously, that was much less of an issue with Switch 2, but I feel like it was still there. It wasn't you couldn't necessarily waltz into GameStop day one,
Game one.
and purchase one. So you have to be able to balance that. You have to be able to balance people who aren't going to upgrade right away, and games are really expensive, so if your user base is going to grow over the course of a couple years, you like can't afford to cut off the bulk of it, while people are still upgrading to the new system. But if you aren't giving people any incentive to upgrade to the new system, really, they won't.
Yes.
Or they will, but maybe not at the rate that you want.
Yes. Again, there's a lot of the PS5 and the Xbox series had a lot of mitigating factors working against it that have carried through this whole generation. That's fair to say, I think.
Definitely.
But also, this is sort of off topic, but like, I've noticed just sort of anecdotally, like a lot more third-party, sort of mid-sized to indie studios, especially coming out of Japan, have been like entirely skipping PlayStation and Xbox, at least at launch.
Yeah.
If they're multi-platform, they're coming out on PC and Switch, and that's it, right? So there's also the factor of like the, especially in Japan, the PlayStation and Xbox user base is pretty limited to start with. They are playing games on their Switch. They're playing games on their phone. They're probably playing games on their computer. So even when targeting something worldwide, for a lot of these, just doing like Switch and Steam is the more economical option. I was thinking about this too. 1,000 Times Resist just announced that they are coming to PlayStation and Xbox. That game, not Japanese, but did also release on Steam and Switch only at launch.
Yeah.
So there's definitely factors where, you know, not even just thinking cross-generationally, but cross-platform, where maybe the effort of releasing it on every platform isn't actually worth it to begin with.
I'd love to see stats on the consoles that people own, right? That's the most
I'm
like,
sure that's out there,
contentless.
but yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't look at it for this episode because it didn't occur to me that it might be interesting to what we're saying until you just said that. But like to me, as much as I am occasionally tempted by an Xbox to access Game Pass, although that would be so bad for me. I play through games so slowly these days. That'd be a bad thing for me to have.
To be honest, you've missed the window of Game Pass being a good deal, I think.
Yeah.
They just like raise prices again and stuff too, so.
Cool. So yes, as much as I have been tempted over the past few years occasionally by the idea of getting an Xbox to be a Game Pass machine. Funny how subscription services were really supposed to be the future, right? And what's happening now?
Yeah.
I mean, just all entertainment industries are tanking is what's happening now. But whatever. It's fine. Probably be fine. I have not really ever felt like, oh, if I was going to have two machines to play games on, it would be an Xbox and a PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
And some of that comes down to Nintendo having far more defended platform exclusivity on some games, right? But also it just comes down to my PlayStation and my Switch serve different purposes for me.
Yeah.
And I think if I were a different person, my computer and a console or my computer and a Switch might serve different purposes for me. I am not that person, really, but I could understand how someone might be. So, yeah, I would be interested to see, though, if that holds true, right? Do people own a Switch and an Xbox and or PlayStation, or is that just me and how I think about things? How does the Steam Deck factor in?
Well, something else I was thinking about, just trying to reconcile, and we can get back on topic after this, but there was just that like research study that came out that said that the average, I think it was US, the average US gamer buys about 2 games a year. And I was just thinking, like, more people are playing games than ever before, but that does not mean that more people are buying games than ever before.
Well, it doesn't mean that more games are being bought. I think
Yes.
if more people are playing games, more people are buying games,
Sure.
but they aren't necessarily. Yeah.
Yes, sure. Correct my language. Thank you.
I wasn't correcting the language. I was just getting at what you were saying, which is
And yet you see stuff like the Switch 2 is the fastest selling console. Right?
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Again, I feel like, so I wrote this in the notes. I think that you're underestimating the power of Mario Kart.
I
Just
guess.
because we're not a Nintendo family. I think that you're underestimating the Mario Kart power. You're like, it needs a killer app, and I'm like, yeah, it released with Mario Kart. The first Mario Kart in like a decade.
Aren't they all the same?
No, apparently not. But that's the thing. Like, you buy the Switch 2 with Mario Kart, and then that's your game.
Yeah.
If you're someone who plays, console games of some sort, you have Mario Kart. That's the game you play, right? And then they have like half a year, and if maybe they release another one, and you're like, ooh, I like that too. I can get Donkey Kong now. The Fire Emblem's out, whatever, right? I I don't know if the person who plays Mario Kart for half the year is like, oh, Fire Emblem's out, but you know what I mean.
Probably not. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to think like consoles selling fast and yet people not buying games. And I do think it's some combination of just like they buy the one game that they wish to play and then they play it.
It's just hard for me to fathom that game being Mario Kart. And here's why. And I'm probably totally off base with this, right? But it feels like, okay, there's a Mario Kart on the Nintendo Switch, right? And Mario Kart to me, I know it's not a yearly release, right?
It's very much
so I
not,
recognize
yes.
I recognize that the things I'm comparing here are not totally comparable. But actually, maybe I will pick something that feels comparable. Okay, you're gonna tell me this argument is stupid, but like, hear me out. Everybody still likes Super Smash, right? We don't necessarily we'd be excited to have a new Super Smash, but we don't feel like we need Super Smash because the one we have is like really good, right?
I'm not in this. I cannot give you a definitive answer on that. I don't know enough about the Smash community.
I am, from my outside perspective.
Yes, I am saying that's kind of the problem. We're not a Nintendo family, so stuff like Mario Kart and Smash Bros. Don't make sense to us.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is that Mario Kart feels like an inherently casual game to me.
Yes.
No, and it's what is hard for me to reconcile in my brain. And obviously I'm wrong about this, right? But what's hard for me to reconcile in my brain is the casual gamer going, I need to buy a new system for Mario Kart when we already have Mario Kart at home. Do you see what I'm getting at here? I realize that I'm wrong. Obviously, it has demonstrated that I am wrong. But what surprises me about that is that I think of the thing that has to sell a new system as having to be like a flashy thing that appeals to, like, that is new, right?
Sure.
And
so you're saying that if the PS6 was announced and its launch game was Crash Team Racing 2, that wouldn't excite you?
Honestly, maybe it wouldn't because the Crash Team Racing 2 that they released was not as good.
Sure, it's a good Crash Team Racing 2.
It would excite me, but I'm not the person that I'm thinking of.
Sure, yeah.
Here.
I was making a facetious comparison. Anyway, what's interesting...
It's just weird to compare it to, and I recognize that Breath of the Wild was technically a cross-platform release. Yes. But it's interesting to compare killer app Mario Kart and who that appeals to killer app Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Right?
Sure.
That's what is interesting to reconcile to me is the difference of how that feels in terms of like what we are talking about games. And I realize that's a very small subset of people who play games. But yeah, just baffling to me, the Switch 2, which has no games, has been the fastest selling console, which has no games, and like how different is it from the Switch 1, really? Is the fastest selling console of all time. Just means that I clearly don't understand what makes people buy a console.
Yeah, apparently. Me neither, to be fair. It'll be Fire Emblem for me. That would be what makes me buy a console. Anyway, on the topic of the Switch 2, I do find it really interesting that This was talked about at Gamescom a lot this summer, but there have been more recent articles too saying that essentially it is still ongoing. It's apparently hard to get a hold of a Switch 2 dev kit. And
in weird ways.
And in a lot of cases, Nintendo has explicitly told people that they should just develop for the Switch and rely on the Switch 2's backwards compatibility to have it run on Switch 2, rather than making like a native Switch 2 version or even like a Switch 2 upgrade. Which is super weird.
Yeah, it's a weird way to handle things. What do you think is behind that, games industry expert Emma?
I don't know. I have no idea. Genuinely. It does feel like they maybe want to continue making games for the Switch as well as the Switch 2. They have this new like ecosystem thing now where you can like do crossplay and share your game or whatever. I think even like something like Mario Kart, like you can like share with one of your family members' Switch original also. Like they can't have it on their Switch, but they can play it on their Switch with you.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering how that works correctly. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I guess maybe they feel like there are some games that would just be fine on Switch, and so they don't have to give their Switch 2 dev kit, and so can keep possession of it under their control a little longer. Like, clearly they've given some to people, you know. There are certain Switch 2 ports that are apparently quite good. The Final Fantasy VII Remake one, the Resident Evils, the newest Resident Evil is going to come to Switch 2 on launch. So they're giving them out to games that certainly couldn't run on Switch, right? But maybe if you're a company making an indie game that would be fine on Switch, maybe they just don't feel like they need you to make a native Switch 2 version.
Just so I understand, though, like, there's no theoretical reason they couldn't make as many of these dev kits as they wanted and send them to people.
But then they are out there. I mean, theoretically, no, you're not supposed to lose track of your dev kit.
Uh-huh.
Right, but it does mean that you're relinquishing control over the secrets of your system to people.
So what, they think someone is going to use that to make like a Switch competitor?
I don't know. Nintendo can be weird about their stuff. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's just like
Nintendo can be very possessive. That is one of their traits as a company. So I feel like maybe that is expressing itself here. That's like my only guess, really.
It's just a weird juxtaposition. I recognize it's two totally different things. But obviously at some point this year, could not tell you when this podcast was, we talked about curation in game fronts and the utter lack of that in the Nintendo Switch store.
That could be a reason too.
Sure. It's just an interesting, and yeah, maybe it's a course correction for that and a quality control measure. But it's an interesting juxtaposition to be like, they are being so stingy with who gets a dev kit for Switch 2, but like any trash can go into that store.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what came to mind for me when I heard about this was, oh, they want to keep it for themselves so that I mean, obviously they're giving it to some people, but they want to mostly give it to themselves so that the first party games are like way better and justify selling. But that feels crazy.
I was reading a Tech Radar article on the Xbox Series S specifically, and just like talking with developers about multi-platform development, and just like, you know, something like Tears of the Kingdom is on Switch, and it feels like it shouldn't be, right, based on other Switch ports that came out. And the developer in this interview is just talking about like, that's because they know their system so well inside out. They're probably not using any sort of like external engine like Unity or Unreal also that's like providing buffer between the game system and the game also. And so they're able to do things that don't feel like they should be possible because they know that thing so well, right?
Well, it's about staff turnover too, right? I mean,
sure,
lower.
yes.
Yeah.
They know that thing so well because they've worked with it for so long.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was an interesting point, right? Of like, even if you get like a dev kit, the amount of time you're able to spend with it also matters to how good your port is of your game, right? It's not like you just get it and you're like, okay, there you go, right?
Yeah, we got it now.
But I did also think that was an interesting point because a lot of people develop in engines like Unreal or Unity now, right? Those are the big third-party engines. And if those engines have problems on certain platforms, if you are not addressing those in your game as well, your game probably also has those problems on certain platforms. So like Unreal Engine 5 games tend to have the same problems on PC no matter who the developer is, for example, which is something that's interesting because the engine has problems, and if you're not putting in the time to fix those problems, then they appear again, no matter what you're doing, essentially.
And we're mostly focused on cross-gen stuff this week, but this is the big challenge of cross-platform development, is that it, makes your work exponentially larger, right? It's not just a matter of slapping the Xbox thing on the front of the box and calling it a day.
Cross-gen even makes your work probably exponentially larger. It does depend on when you decided to do it, for example.
Well, that's why some of the Nintendo stuff is wild to me too. They've said like, oh, Donkey Kong was not originally supposed to be a Switch 2 game. Pokemon was not originally supposed to be a Switch 2 game. And it's like, that's actually crazy that's something you changed midstream. That feels
to be
hard
fair,
and bad.
To go up to a better system is certainly easier than deciding halfway through development, oh, we're actually going to support the lower system also. Yeah. Because you've probably been making the game to run as best it can on the lower power system, and as soon as you put it on a higher power system, it may already be running better.
Right. But it doubles or triples your QA at the very least. I mean, you have to be testing it across different things. If it's cross-platform, now you'd be like, oh, are people getting the same experience? Are people getting the same enough experience cross-gen? It's why some stuff, and I'll pivot back to cross-gen mostly in a moment, but like, it's sort of wild that Elden Ring Night Rain launched and has basically no cross-play plans.
Yeah.
But that would make things like adds a whole gigantic new wrinkle to what they're doing, and they don't want to do it.
Yep.
So they won't. Also, last cross-platform thing. Did you know from the Epic lawsuit that Sony is like taking a revenue share from cross-platform stuff?
I do now. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Sure. I mean, basically the idea is that if people are playing on PSN infrastructure, but they're buying their skins or cosmetics or expansion packs or whatever on their phones, to a greater degree, like it kicks in at a certain percentage of revenue, basically. It's not like if they're mostly buying on PlayStation that they also get a cut of mobile revenue. There's like a formula for it. So it makes sense, but also it's sort of wild that Fortnite wasn't able to win that battle.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm pivoting back to cross-generation here, or really same generation, because I want to talk about the Xbox Series S.
Yes.
Gaming's least favorite child.
Listen, now that the Switch 2's out, it's probably less of a problem. If you're already making it for the Switch 2, you can probably make it for the Series S easier.
Fair enough.
But for a while, it was a bit of a problem for developers.
Yeah. It is interesting to me, though, that there's all these articles. I feel like there's so much out there about like, oh, the Xbox Series S is holding things back. It's holding things back, right? Whereas I don't necessarily feel like there's the same. I mean, there's like whining about cross-platform stuff, but why are we not whining about the PS4? Like all games getting PS4 releases in the same way. I feel like it's not a lightning rod like the Series S.
I think it's because even if you, I wrote this down somewhere, like even if you make the choice, like, okay, we're going to be next gen only.
Yeah.
For a while, and I think this is still their standard policy, although they have made some exceptions, Xbox demanded like feature parity between the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X version. And this makes sense, right? You do not want people releasing crappy versions of their games for the Series S because that looks bad for you. But it does mean that even if you're deciding to make your next gen game, you do have to cater to a system that is much lower powered, it's notably lower powered than the PS5 or the Series S. Series X, I'm sorry. Whatever, the names are stupid.
They are stupid. Do you think, again, games industry expert Emma, do you think they regret making the Series S?
I think Xbox regrets a lot of things, and so they should. They should regret even more, is my opinion.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, I have a Series S.
I know you do.
I have not used it for anything I would call next gen. The primary games I've played on it are the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy.
Yeah.
So, is that an answer for you? I guess.
Yeah. It's just interesting how much of a thorn in the side of development it's been. Although, again, given that almost everything that has come out for the PlayStation 5, it feels like, has also come out for the PlayStation 4. I know that has started to change over the past year-ish or so.
To be fair, Sony has just not released a lot of first-party games.
Yeah.
This generation, which is its own problem. But all of those have been PS5 exclusives.
Sure. I'm not saying there aren't any.
And I think same for Microsoft Studios. Mostly.
Well, but isn't that a problem in its own right? This is another thing that came up in that first, maybe second Polygon article I was talking about, not the Pokemon one, is there's a guy quoted in it named Matthew Ball who, basically makes the point that billions of dollars goes into making these new consoles every year. And also because of their increased hardware, and their ability to do more graphic fidelity or ray tracing fancy features, they make, as we talk about on the show all the time, they make game development take longer and they make it way more expensive, and so it's interesting in a market where we are probably selling the console at a loss, right, or at a very modest product, right, that ultimately they are driving the price up for everything, even though we are still supporting the PlayStation 4 pretty robustly here in October 2025. So it's an interesting question of the return on investment of continuing to release new consoles, because what's it doing for us? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting take.
Yeah. I mean, gaming is a luxury hobby.
Yeah.
Just worth putting out there. They've all of them have raised prices recently for factors. Yep. Mostly factors somewhat out of their control, but
sure.
Factors.
Yep.
And yeah, it's maybe they're just hoping that 2027 things will have gone back to normal, but I don't know if I would be, I don't know if the company I would be banking on that at this point.
No. Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, whatever. When the Switch 2 price was announced, everyone was like, "Oh my god, that's so expensive," and everyone's buying it anyway. So, who friggin' knows?
I wonder what the ramifications will be of Nintendo being so out of cycle with everyone else.
4DS.
Well, sure. That wasn't really. I was just, because now it's like, oh, the Switch 2 is like maybe as powerful as the current generation of consoles, right?
No.
Like, well, are closer to.
Yes, they're
Right.
closer than the Switch, but no, they're not.
Right.
I mean, it's probably like Series S powerful.
Sure, that's the current generation of consoles,
I know.
Emma.
Maybe a little less than that. Who knows?
So
It has to run on handheld too, so that does have the factor.
So it's interesting to consider, what does that mean in this increasingly cross-platform world for how you have to develop something? Because if the Switch 2 is selling like crazy to everybody, right? That's an important market. But if we move to whatever the next nonsense Xbox name will be, / the PS6 in the next, year and a half, maybe, right? That's probably generous, but still, certainly in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Presumably, those pieces of hardware are going to be very out of sync with each other. So, because we're only just seeing some of the big PlayStation and Xbox releases from a couple years ago. I mean, I know that some of the ports are good, but potentially limp their way onto the Switch too. It's just an interesting challenge to consider how that's going to be handled, as that gap probably widens even further in the next couple years.
I mean, it almost feels like you have to try to go back to having more exclusives on your system. And in a way that means, I don't know, maybe they should make something like the PlayStation 3 again.
Right. Something that you actually have to develop for.
Yes, something that you have to develop for, something that you have to buy to be able to play special games on it. It's just hard to visualize what that would look like, because I don't know anything about tech. Just putting that out there.
It feels like, again, as someone without much knowledge here, it feels like that is the kind of thing that would not play nicely with the market share domination of Unreal and Unity.
Yes,
right?
There's that too. Yes, a lot of people use these engines to develop. The engines have to be able to support multiple platforms, and that is work from those guys. And who knows how long Unity will be around, to be honest. We'll see. I don't know. It's giving them some odds on that. But it from a console maker's perspective, 4DS.
Sure.
That's what I just feel like we can't just keep improving graphics, right? Because at this point, unless you're a freak, with all the love of my heart, you can't tell the difference. And so it really has to be like, this has an innovative feature that's noticeable.
Maybe charitably you can tell the difference between last gen and current gen, but there's not a step that's gonna go beyond that.
I don't really mean literally you can't tell the difference, but we could have stayed at PS4 level, and I don't know, that probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
We could have stayed at PS3 level and had better art design, and that probably would have been fine.
But see, it's this catch-22, right? Because, I mean, maybe if we're willing to abandon the graphics arms race, we're not. But, you bring up the 4DS, and it does feel like for that to be viable, well, it's very easy to imagine how it could be viable for Nintendo.
Yes.
Right? Especially given what, despite my bafflement, we see with the Switch 2.
They're selling, luxury game gear hardware. So, they can do whatever the hell they want, I think.
Well, but what I'm saying is, it actually doesn't matter if I'm Nintendo, if the platform that I release has much of a life with third-party developers, right? Clearly, as we can see with the Switch 2, all that matters is that we hit people with a couple of can't get it anywhere else Nintendo games, and people will buy it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're Nintendo, you can probably do that. But you would have to, if you're a game development studio, it feels like, put all your chips down there.
Yep.
Say, we are going to develop for the 4DS, and that's what we're going to do. Because the idea that we are also developing, I mean, obviously the games won't really be able to be, we saw that, right? We've seen plenty of ports in the past of like, it's also on the DS and it's weird now,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same game really, but we're calling it the same game.
Yep.
So you'd have to go all in on that, which is really risky, both from the perspective of like, well, just from every perspective, right? You have to go all in on that platform and learning that platform and like what happens if uptake on that platform isn't what you want it to be, or it's a Wii U situation, like they abandon it eventually. Like if they don't make another one, right? Like what happened to everyone who was developing for the 3DS, right? I don't know. Probably not great things to many of those people. But also because game development keeps getting more and more expensive, like the reason stuff is cross-platform is like both probably because it's expected, whatever. But it's like they actually need that many people to buy the game.
Yep.
Right? You need to be able to reach them. It's just hard to imagine being a viable studio anymore unless you're Nintendo and saying, oh, I'm only going to develop for like this one platform.
I mean, certainly at the AAA level, unless you're, like you said, unless you're owned by one of them. We've seen Square Enix learn this lesson in real time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, based on how they've talked about it, the language, that the third remake game is going to be cross-platform on launch, including the Switch too.
Sure.
Which like is interesting in comparison to like how long they were PlayStation exclusive originally.
Yeah. But games are too expensive now.
Yes,
you can't,
and people don't buy it in Japan if it's only on PlayStation.
Yeah.
And people don't buy it here if it's only on PlayStation. They want it on their computer.
Yeah. Give us computer games. Game development's so hard, man.
I mean, we're talking about like also like discrete consoles, like PC development.
Wild.
There are so many PCs.
Yeah.
In the world. There are so many different kinds. I mean, you could try to put a lower limit on it, right? You can give the minimum required things in your Steam description, but like even between that and the newest ones, like, man, there's a lot of PCs out there with their own quirks that you just don't know how they're going to react. You can't have that many PCs tested, right?
I do feel like at least with PC gaming, there is perhaps a slightly greater understanding among PC gamers of like what specs mean.
Yes.
Right? Like they do have to understand, because there are so many PCs out there, has to be a greater understanding of, oh yes, the relative power of my PC is such that like this game might look like crap if I play it on mine.
Yes, I mean that's why there are finer control settings on PC usually.
Right.
Because on the console, you don't have to do any of that setup. It's just ready for the console, right? Whereas on your PC, you might have to fiddle around with the settings for a while to figure out what actually works on your system.
But on a PC, I probably understand a little bit about what's under the hood of my system. Like, not understand it, but I might have some numbers in my head that I understand. Other than being able to tell you, oh, I think the Switch kind of less powerful, I could tell you absolutely nothing about, like, the relative what's under the hood of the platforms, of the consoles.
Sure.
So it's just, like, it's an interesting knowledge gap.
I mean, that's kind of the trade-off that consoles offer. They're selling you convenience as much as they're selling you any number of features, right? Like, theoretically, I could go build a gaming PC right now. Anyone could go build their gaming PC right now. But one, it's probably expensive. Two, you'd have to learn a lot or pay even more money to get someone to build it for you, right?
Yep.
And then you have to know stuff about games to know if your PC will work with it and how it best works. Whereas my PlayStation 5, I just put the disc in. Maybe I choose between graphics and performance mode, and then I'm ready to go, you know?
Maybe there shouldn't be another generation.
like we've talked about, I just have trouble imagining it. We've talked about console generations before. I think that was one of our things. But I really do feel like from a business perspective, I cannot say how I would like this or dislike this as a consumer, but I feel like any further generation of games might need to not support like cross-generational stuff, like not have backwards compatibility, right? And
the people will riot.
Yeah, and maybe some games develop for both, but you know, like maybe it needs to not have that direct. I mean, even now it's really expected that like if you were releasing like for like games on Switch now need to have their Switch 2 upgrade path or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's for like, I think we've decided that provided it's beefy enough, we will pay $10 for it, right?
Yeah.
But we'd really prefer it was free, you know?
Yeah.
Which is so interesting to me because it's like these upgrade path things, it's like, it's not like your PS4 copy would not work on your PS5, right?
Yeah.
It's just it wouldn't be as high quality, I guess. It wouldn't have as high quality options. And for me, it's like, well, who cares? But people care, I guess, so...
They want to get the bang for their... I mean, they've got this fancy new console. They want to get the bang for their buck. I do sort of understand that.
Sure.
But yeah, it does feel very weird to be looking toward the next generation when... Not to be like a capital G gamer about this, but how many games have really come out where it's felt like, yeah, like, this couldn't have happened on my PS4?
Astrobot.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
Killer app Astrobot. No,
Killer
I'm
app
serious.
Astrobot.
I'm serious. And that comes down mostly to the new controller technology.
Yeah.
Almost more than anything else. So.
Yeah, it's just it feels like if a new generation of consoles were to come out in the next 2 years, that we would have not a lot of games, but some games releasing for Gen 8, Gen 9, and Gen 10 consoles.
Yep.
Which is objectively sort of crazy.
And they'd somehow release The Last of Us again.
They certainly would.
Just to lean into being the gamer there for a minute.
Honestly, if I was Naughty Dog, I would not have a choice but to do that.
Yep, I know.
You know, like, just... If I'm Neil Druckmann, I would say, let them come for me. I would. I wouldn't be able to help myself. Is GTA 6 releasing for old gen?
GTA 6 is only confirmed... Oh, wait. No, they did confirm it for PC, maybe? I don't know. Every time I search something like this, they get me, like, stupid. I don't know. As of May, it says just PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series SX. So it doesn't even have a confirmed PC release at this point.
Okay. Just wild to consider that we're 5 years into this generation. And I know that it is always the case that, like, the great games of a generation come out at the end. But just the timeline of game development now is so wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, to circle back, I would like to see what the trees look like in Pokemon Legends Za.
On the Switch.
On the Switch.
Actually, I am very curious. I bet stuff like, I mean, it's an urban environment, right? I bet stuff like crowd size is really impacted.
Well, they talked about for Donkey Kong. I saw an interview about Donkey Kong Bonanza that was like, you know, we were developing this for Switch, but we realized we really wanted that, like, the destruction is really important in this game, right? Donkey Kong being able to destroy stuff, and even more than that, have the game remember that you destroyed it was really important to us, and that was really not possible the way we wanted it to be on the OG Switch. So I'm not saying that there aren't upgrades.
It does make me really curious that that was going to be for the Switch initially, of like how they decided on like the Switch 2 launch timing. Like, was that always planned to come out after? I mean, they probably have games done before they release them by a lot, honestly, if I'm thinking about it. So maybe probably not.
Yeah.
But it does make me wonder why didn't, well, maybe they pushed it up because of the whole situation, by which I mean the world. I do wonder that too.
That's possible.
I wonder if they pushed it up to try to get ahead of stuff and weren't quite able to manage it. Because I kind of wonder if Donkey Kong was like supposed to be a launch title at any point, or if they're always like, yeah, it'll come out a month after. You know?
Well, or do you think something else got Miyamoto delayed?
Or just like held on to. They do that sometimes too. There were rumors of like Engage, for example, was like done for like 2 years before they released it or something like that. So sometimes they're just like, yeah, it's okay, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to remember too that Breath of the Wild was supposed to be a Wii U exclusive.
Yeah.
So sometimes things happen for a reason.
Apparently.
A Wii U title is bad forever, as Miyamoto would say.
I think he would, honestly, yeah. It might be something he'd say.
That's another interesting factor with the original Switch launch too, is that like the Wii U just sucked. Like that's an interesting, I mean, whatever. Interesting things about the Wii U. Breath of the Wild probably actually really designed for that.
They couldn't figure out how to
the system.
Describe it, basically, I think.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out how to market it.
It's interesting to think of the cross-gen stuff. Like the difference between moving from the Wii U to the Switch versus the Switch to the Switch 2 or the PS4 to the PS5 of, oh, you actually have a strong user base and you can't just abandon the old system. The contrasts there are interesting and obviously have the ramifications of like, here we still are.
Yep.
And you know, I can't say that if my PS4 hadn't self-destructed, I might still be a PS4 player. There's not been so much that's come out just for PS5 that it would have gotten me. And it's probably, I know Fire Emblem is going to get you. I still haven't played Engage. So I don't know if Fire Emblem is going to get me for the Switch 2. It's really the series that I'm into that will convince me to upgrade. So we'll see when that is on Nintendo.
For what it's worth, you know, Clair Obscur, not on the PS4, I believe.
I would not have upgraded for Clair Obscur. I'm enjoying it. I'm happy that I'm playing it.
I was thinking of that. I was thinking of games you were playing right now, and I realized I didn't know if it was on PS4, and I don't think that it is.
Well, wouldn't have been the killer app for me, gotta say.
I'm just saying. I was curious.
Much as I love a good parry.
It's an example. There are third-party games now that are being developed just for next gen.
Well, Emma, any closing thoughts? Should I make a PS2 game?
That's a hip thing right now.
I know.
We love the PS2. Yeah, I don't know. You should make a
game development hard. Game development expensive. Gamers never happy.
I just want a 4DS.
Gamers want cross-platform, but they don't want
air at my face.
True. Emma wants a fan. What Emma wants is one of those little portable Subway fans, actually, that she can clip to a lighter Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, and then I want it to react dynamically, you know?
Sure.
If my character is running, I want to feel, you know, the motion through air.
Get on it, Nintendo.
Through air being flown at my face. That's what I want as a gamer.
Well, listeners, on that note, thank you for listening to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you liked what you heard, if you have thoughts about cross-platform or cross-generation, do you expect things to be backwards or forwards compatible? Are you mad when things are backwards compatible? The gamers they really want both things, right?
Yeah.
They want to be able to, play it on backwards. They want backwards compatibility, but they also want next generation experiences.
Yes.
And pals, you probably can't have both.
Yes.
But if you have thoughts on that or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog. Emma, any blog content coming from you? You're busy with school.
I am busy with school. Replay review is on the back burner. Sorry. I would like
But there's lots of blog content to read.
Yes.
But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon. Emma, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, for our old game, we're talking about Destiny. And for our new game, I believe it was Sword of the Sea.
That sounds right, but you'll find out when you tune in next week. As will I.
Yes.
All right, folks, that's our show. Emma, sign us off.
This week, I hope that your generations get along together.